Hey guys, tonight we step softly through the velvet shadows of an empire built not only on swords and scrolls, but on something even more fragile dreams. Imagine yourself barefoot, your toes sinking into cool carpeted marble as moonlight glints off domes outside. You're not here to carry a message or prepare a royal feast. No. You're here for something stranger. You are the Royal Sleep Whisperer, and yes, that's your actual job. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are right now. It's always fascinating to picture these stories unfolding across the world in little sleepy corners. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're led through a maze of hanging silks, each panel dyed deeper and deeper shades of blue, until you're wrapped in what feels like dusk itself. The scent of jasmine oil curls through the air. Somewhere in the distance, a sitar hums its final sleepy note of the evening. You follow a eunuch guard, stone-faced eyes half-lidded with exhaustion, who gestures silently for you to wait. Your job isn't to speak. Not yet. Not until you're alone in the chamber. Not until it's time. You step inside the prince's bedchamber. It's not like anything you've seen before. The ceiling stretches up into darkness, covered in gold stars, hammered into the wood by craftsmen who probably went blind doing it. A bed sits in the center, low to the floor, but as wide as a boat. Its mattress is stuffed with rose petals and sheep's wool, and its covers are embroidered with silver-threaded elephants walking in an eternal circle. And on this extravagant nest of a bed lies a boy, a prince, 17 years old, draped in sleep or something near it. He breathes through his mouth, his brows twitch, his fingers curl, loosen, curl again. Dreams are flirting with him, but they haven't committed. That's where you come in. You kneel. You place a small bronze bowl beside you, filled with sandalwood water and rose petals. This is not for drinking. It's for scent. You wave your hand over it gently to lift the fragrance into the room, then begin. Your voice is soft. Not words at first. Just tone. Just a melody barely formed. A hum round and low and comforting. You're not here to sing a concert. You're here to seduce sleep. Every note is spaced like footsteps on a quiet hallway. The prince shifts. You try again. This time, you use words ancient lullabies, first sung by wet nurses in the kitchens. Songs that rhyme stars with jasmine horses with hammocks. You keep your tone even. You elongate your vowels. It's not about what you say, it's the rhythm, the softness, the spell. And here's the thing. No one tells you this job is dangerous. Not physically, perhaps, though. Mughal court punishments are never mild. But if you fail, if your voice cracks, if the prince wakes in a foul mood, if he has a nightmare and decides it's your fault, you might find yourself reassigned. And by reassigned, they usually mean missing. You probably won't survive this. So you take your time. One note, one breath, one perfectly measured pause. This job exists because sleep in the Mughal court wasn't just rest, it was a divine act. A princely nap was sacred. It wasn't only about health or pleasure, it was prophecy. It was spiritual. If a prince dreamed of riding a tiger, priests might declare war the next morning. If he dreamed of drowning, astrologers would scramble for interpretations, often scribbling furiously on palm leaves at dawn. What he dreamed could change people's lives, sometimes entire provinces. And your job, you're the gatekeeper of that dream world. Historians still argue whether royal sleep whisperers were selected from the ranks of palace musicians, or if they were trained specifically for this eerie role. Some believe they were once poets whose voices had gone out of fashion. Others say they were often eunuchs, trusted to wander the harem, speak gently, and never be tempted. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. You weren't chosen for strength. You were chosen for softness. Tonight the prince requests a story. He doesn't speak it aloud. He flicks his finger toward the storyteller's cushion and closes his eyes. You shift closer and begin with an old tale of a banyan tree that bore silver fruit. Each fruit held a memory, and one boy who ate too many began dreaming other people's lives. You glide through the tale slowly, letting each sentence stretch like silk unraveling. He breathes deeper. You drop your voice even lower, almost a whisper now. You barely shape the consonants. Your voice is warm honey. The prince's face slackens. His lips part. The muscles behind his eyes soften. You did it, but the job's not over. You remain seated there in the dim, with nothing but the rustle of curtains and the distant croak of a frog from the palace pool. You wait an hour, sometimes two. You keep humming, barely just enough to keep his sleep undisturbed. Around the second hour, the eunuch returns. He raises one eyebrow, silently checking. You nod. Mission accomplished. You rise, bones cracking softly, and bow before backing out of the room. You never turn your back to royalty, even when they're snoring like a dying camel. Outside, another sleep whisperer waits. She's older. Her knees are bad. You exchange a look, mutual respect. This job, though strange, is an art form. Few can master it. Fewer still survive its politics. You head to the whisperer's quarters, tucked behind the music hall. It's quiet there, fitting, really. Your bed is nothing like the prince's, but it'll do. As you lie down, your own lullaby still dances in your head. Funny, isn't it? You put the empire's heir to sleep, and now it's your turn. You wake to the chirping of parakeets in the fig trees, their calls echoing faintly through the sandstone courtyards. Sunlight stretches across the tiled floor of your small quarters like spilled saffron. There's no time to dawdle. You have another strange assignment today. You roll up your sleep mat, rinse your mouth with mint leaf water, and follow the scent of breakfast through the hush of morning incense. Today you're shadowing one of the emperor's more flamboyant employees, the peacock keeper extraordinaire. Yes, that's the title, well loosely translated. In the original Persian court registers, it's more poetic, more Bagban-e-Khas, the private garden peacock gardener. But don't let the word gardener fool you. This job isn't about planting flowers. It's about managing personalities, feathery, fussy, temperamental ones. You arrive at the imperial aviary just as the dew is still clinging to the grass. The aviary isn't some rustic coop in the corner. It's a marble pavilion with arched ceilings and latticed walls built solely for the display and care of peacocks. The birds aren't caged. No, that would be uncouth. They roam freely across the garden, and they're pampered more than most nobles. A boy no older than 10 is singing to one of the birds, crouched low, gently flaring a fan to mimic its tail. That's your trainer. He gestures for you to join him and warns. Don't stare at their eye spots too long. They think it's rude. You're skeptical, but then a peacock struts past tail shimmering like emerald fire, and you instinctively avert your gaze. Something about its slow, regal nod says, "Yes, good. Know your place. Your first task is combing." The birds demand daily preening from human hands, even though they're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. But this is the Mughal court presentation, is everything, especially when the emperor walks past with guests from Persia or France. A ragged feather could spark an international incident. You kneel with an ivory comb and begin gently untangling feathers. It's oddly meditative. The peacock watches you with one eye unblinking. You get the sense that he's judging your technique. Meanwhile, your trainer explains that each peacock has a name, a mood chart, and a favored snack. One is partial to rose petals soaked in honey. Another, the pale blue one with a limp, prefers pomegranate seeds cut in half, never whole. You joke. Do they have therapists too? He doesn't laugh. We don't joke in front of the birds. He says, dead serious, this isn't superstition, it's status. In the Mughal world, peacocks were more than decoration. They were imperial metaphors, beauty, pride, and cosmic order. Their tails, with their many eyes, were seen as protective symbols warding off evil. The Emperor Jahangir himself wrote in his memoirs about how watching peacocks calmed his spirit. Some even believed their cries could predict monsoons. Historians still argue whether the peacocks were ever trained for rituals or performances. Some sources claim they danced on cue during Nowruz festivals. Others insist their movements were simply interpreted as divine signs. Either way, your job is not to direct them, but to understand them. The day wears on. You refill the jade water bowls, place new hibiscus blossoms on the marble ledges, and whisper to a particularly grumpy hen who refuses to come down from a mango tree. You've heard of cat wranglers, but this is on a whole new level. Your trainer shows you the ancient peacock ledger, a scroll kept since Akbar's reign. It includes descriptions of each bird's lineage, feather patterns, and health history. There's even a column for general mood, which today reads more Nori playful, more Azad brooding, more Gulshan vengeful do not pet. Later during the midday stroll, the emperor appears. You freeze. Everyone does. Even the peacocks go still, as if they know. The emperor doesn't look at you. Why would he? But he does pause by the birds. One of them, Gulshan, the vengeful one, flares his tail and gives a soft trill. The emperor smiles. You exhale, a close call. The trainer later tells you that years ago, a visiting envoy laughed at a peacock's cry and was never seen again. You're not sure if that's true, but in this palace, truth bends like hot air over marble. As the sun tilts westward, you assist in the final ritual of the day, interpreting the bird's evening behavior. Each bird's direction of sleep, nesting position, and final cry are carefully noted by the keeper. He marks them down with a goose feather quill and reads the results like an astrologer. Tonight, 3 birds face east. 1 trills twice. The keeper frowns. He says rain's coming early. Tell the kitchen not to soak the lentils overnight. You're not sure if he's joking. You don't ask. As you leave the aviary, feathers still clinging to your sleeves, you realize your knees ache and your hands smell faintly of hibiscus oil. You didn't expect to like this job, but there's something comforting about caring for creatures that demand reverence. In a world of rigid hierarchy, the peacock exists outside of rank, its beauty pure and proud. As you pass through the servants' hallway, a young girl smiles and offers you a mango slice. You smell like a garden. She giggles. You nod. You do. Tomorrow, you're scheduled to assist with a job that's somehow even stranger. But for now, you close your eyes and imagine feathers brushing your cheek, bright, iridescent, and ancient as empires. It's not even dawn yet, and already the air is humming with perfume. Not flowers blooming in the courtyards, not the musky breath of incense coals or the sweetness of sugar boiling in the kitchens. No, this scent is too calculated, too impossibly perfect to be accidental. This is curated fragrance. It's layered, intentional. The Mughal court doesn't merely smell pleasant. It smells like politics and power disguised in sandalwood and rose. You've barely rubbed the sleep from your eyes when you're handed a narrow lacquered wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, is a delicate glass vial shaped like a teardrop. The stopper is wax sealed with the imperial insignia, a lion and sun, their curves gilded. The scent it holds inside, you're told, is so refined that only 3 people in the entire empire know how to blend it correctly. Today, you're about to meet one of them. You follow your guide through quiet halls into the inner chambers, far from the clamor of courtyards and garden musicians. Here, behind triple doors, veiled in silk and silence, lives the nose of the emperor. That's not a nickname, it's a title. His official role is royal perfumer, but within these walls, he's revered and feared simply as the nose, because that's exactly what he is, a man who has trained his senses to such terrifying precision that he can detect not only a single drop of oud oil in a pitcher of rose water, but also which region the oud came from and whether the agar wood it was distilled from grew during a dry or wet year. You meet him sitting cross-legged on a velvet cushion, a damp cloth tied over his mouth and nose. He doesn't look up when you enter. He's busy. His head bowed over a shallow silver tray where a line of white ceramic dishes fan out like flower petals. Each one holds something different: shards of dried wood, gold-infused resin, crushed blossoms, mysterious yellow powders that shimmer faintly under the lamplight. "You wore jasmine oil to sleep," he says without greeting. You blink. "You did just a single drop behind the ear." "Yes." "But how did you—" "Don't speak. It travels when you speak." He lifts his hand and waves you closer. You approach cautiously, like someone nearing a tiger dressed in silk. As you lower yourself onto the floor cushion beside him, he sighs. "You smell like an overeager courtesan, You don't know whether to be insulted or impressed. With slow, deliberate movements, the nose begins to teach you. No dramatic introductions, no long speeches, just gestures and the quiet rustle of silk sleeves. You start with the basics, how to hold your breath while grinding petals so as not to absorb their essence, how to pour oil over resins and age them under sunlight without letting them ferment. It's not perfumery, it's alchemy, a kind of sacred science passed down from Persian apothecaries and perfected here in the Mughal courts. The nose was born to a line of spice merchants in Isfahan raised to identify saffron by scent alone before he could write his own name. He was brought to court at the age of 10 because the emperor's physician noticed him identifying guests by the scent trails on their robes. He's served 3 emperors since then and outlasted dozens of ministers. Historians still argue whether royal perfumers like him were just artisans or secret influencers. Some claim the emperor would change his entire schedule based on which scent felt lucky that morning. Others say the nose once foiled a poisoning plot by detecting a drop of toxic root oil in the empress's morning bath mix. That claim has never been proven. But even the guards won't speak in the perfumery chamber unless they've fasted from spices and washed in milk. You learn to distill rose water with snow from Himalayan glaciers. You see oils so rare they're stored in locked cabinets with elephant bone keys. You are introduced to civet musk, extracted from the scent glands of a wild cat, but aged so long in saffron and cedar that it smells less like animal and more like silk on fire. Your tasks are simple for now: cleaning glass vials, measuring drips, gently warming oils over coals using tiny silver spoons. But each moment feels weighty. You're not just making perfume, you're sculpting memory, identity, power. Each scent is associated with something. One blend jasmine, sandalwood, and myrrh is for the emperor's morning turban. It's designed to wake the senses without agitating them. Another mixture, lavender, with the barest hint of camphor, is reserved for when the emperor receives reports of border skirmishes. It calms the nerves and sharpens the focus. There is even a sorrow blend worn only during funerals or days of mourning. It's cool and wet smelling, like a monsoon on marble. You help prepare a batch of this today. The emperor's hawk, a prized hunting companion, has died. No courtiers speak of it, but the nose is already preparing the palace air to reflect it. He loved that bird more than his cousin, he murmurs, more than most of his wives. You watch as he layers lotus root, blue cypress, and a whisper of frankincense onto a cloth square that will be burned in the emperor's private garden. The smoke will smell like quiet regret. Later, you accompany the nose to the emperor's chambers, not inside, of course, but just outside the veil. He holds a vial the way a warrior holds a blade, with reverence and readiness. The emperor dreams only when the air is clean, he tells you, and only cedar and sandal will let him pass into the dream without bringing the world with him. The vial contains precisely that. It's not applied to the emperor's skin. It's dabbed on the pillow corners, on the seams of the sheets, under the sleeping mat. The scent must whisper, not speak. You watch heart racing as the nose performs his quiet art with the gravity of a priest. When it's done, he breathes in the space and closes his eyes. This will be a night without memory, he says. You return to the perfumery in silence. As you sit on the floor rinsing glass droppers with milk and cotton, the air around you still dances with the morning's work, warmth, flowers, longing. You feel different, as though scent now has a weight to it, a shape. It's then you notice a small pot left on your work table, a simple wooden jar sealed with wax bearing your name. You open it carefully. Inside is a scent unlike any you've ever known, earthy, soft, with a whisper of something bitter, like rain on old stone. It smells like fear and curiosity and early morning. The nose nods once from across the room. That is you, as you are now. You ask, will it change? Of course, he replies. All things that are alive do. You take the jar with you that night and fall asleep with it tucked in under your pillow. The dreams are strange, but they are yours. You wake up groggy, but intrigued, the soft scent of cedar and cypress still curling through your mind like smoke from a half-remembered fire. The jar from the perfumery is warm beneath your pillow. You press it to your nose and breathe deeply. Still, you still earthy, but now there's something new in it. A faint sweetness like figs ripening on the branch. You get dressed slowly today, careful with your robe, cautious not to pick up any stray scent. You're learning. The nose has changed you, but today you're not returning to the perfumery. No oils, no flowers, no whispered dreams. No, today you're being sent somewhere noisier. Stranger, you're following a palace servant through the harem wing, across marble courtyards and shaded pavilions, to a place few outsiders ever see, the Department of Royal Hair. You weren't expecting this. But yes, the Mughal emperors, glorious, fearsome, godlike rulers, had an entire division of their palace staff dedicated solely to their hair, and not just the hair on their heads either. Every follicle mattered, from beard to brow, to the very edge of their imperial chest. There were protocols. You're greeted at the door by a man with the tallest, oiliest pompadour you've ever seen. He bows low and introduces himself as the Shanai-e-Mu, the flute of hair. You stifle a giggle. He doesn't. Laughter, he says, encourages follicular instability. You nod solemnly, as though that makes any sense at all. The Shanai gestures for you to follow him into the preparation room, where your training begins. It's a chamber filled with tools, ivory combs, silver scissors, brushes made from squirrel fur razors, so sharp they could split a grain of rice. Everything is arranged with military precision. The emperor's scalp, he tells you, is a landscape of divine significance. A single nick is tantamount to treason. You gulp. Your first task is simple, thankfully heating oil. But not just any oil. Oh no, you are to prepare the 36 Blessings blend, a recipe said to be as old as Baber himself. It contains, among other things, almond castor sesame, black cumin, a touch of myrrh, 3 drops of peacock feather extract. Yes, apparently that's a thing, and a mysterious 7th ingredient that the Shanai will only refer to as the sigh of a moonlit widow. You're not sure if he's joking. He never blinks. You warm the mixture over a copper brazier, keeping the flame low and your movements gentle. If the oil overheats, it loses its song, you're told. Hair responds to music. You must learn to hum while you work. So you hum. A little off key, the oil gurgles contentedly. Progress. Historians still argue whether Mughal hair care was a matter of hygiene or divine symbolism. Some say it was all about projecting order and discipline, the emperor's immaculately groomed beard signifying control over both body and realm. Others point to astrological charts that dictated when hair could be cut, oiled, or left untouched. It wasn't just vanity, it was destiny worn on the brow. And then there's the beard. Ah, the emperor's beard. A thing of legend, a crescent of perfection so meticulously shaped that court painters often exaggerated its symmetry just to save time. Maintaining it was a sacred duty. Every morning before sunrise, the beard master, a title as real and revered as the nose, would arrive, with an entourage of barbers, oil bearers, and towel warmers. Each had a role. One applied rose water, one massaged the temples, one combed the beard 32 times in each direction. Why 32, no one knows. But if you do 31, the emperor frowns. 33, and you might be reassigned to latrine duty. Today, you're allowed to observe. You watch as the beard master kneels beside the emperor's silver-mirrored couch, applying paste to a cloth and gently rubbing the emperor's cheeks with rhythmic grace. The emperor doesn't speak. He seems to drift between waking and sleep, lulled by the careful strokes, the scent of myrrh and clove. You notice something strange. A servant carries a tiny fan made of goose feathers and waves it above the emperor's head, not for cool air, but to chase away the scent of the oils before they reach his eyes. The emperor's nose must never detect the grooming, only feel its effects. Subtle, as always. Later, you assist with the hair-drying ritual. Yes, there is one. After oiling the emperor's hair, must be dried not with cloth, but with warm breezes generated by handheld fans woven from silkworm thread. Each fan takes weeks to make and must be infused with sandalwood smoke before use. Cloth is too coarse, the Shanai whispers. The emperor's hair deserves air. Of course it does. And when the beard is finally combed, braided at the tips, and perfumed with vetiver root, only then is the emperor fully presentable. Only then does he rise, and the day officially begin. You've never thought about hair this much in your life. But as you help pack away the brushes and scissors, you begin to see the purpose. In a world where power can hinge on whispers, where rivals are watching for any sign of weakness, appearance is armor. The emperor's hair isn't just hair, it's a signal, a banner, a message of strength, braided in oil and shadow. As you leave the chamber, you notice a smaller room off to the side. Inside, two elderly women are working silently. They're weaving something from fine strands, gray coarse, but clearly human. What are they doing, you ask? The Shehnai glances over, reinforcing the imperial mustache. He lost 2 hairs during yesterday's tiger hunt. You stare. You're sewing in replacement hairs. He nods. With thread made from peacock silk, it must look seamless. Otherwise, Questions arise, of course. Can't have your empire's enemies thinking your mustache is thinning. Outside, the sun is rising. The scent of rosewater drifts behind you, and you catch sight of the emperor himself walking toward his morning audience. His robe gleams. His beard shines like lacquered wood. He walks as though his hair alone could win a war, and perhaps it could. That night, back in your chambers, you try brushing your own hair 32 times. You use a worn comb and whisper the counting aloud. It feels silly at first, then oddly comforting. By stroke 20, your breathing slows. By stroke 30, you're almost dreaming. On 32, you close your eyes. You smile just a little and let the hair fall where it may. You dream of feathers, great fluttering fans made of white heron wings, lifting you up into some high, domed chamber swaddled in mist and silk. But when you open your eyes, you're not flying, you're sweating. Because today, you're headed to the Mughal court's royal sweater collectors. No, not wool sweaters, actual sweat. The kind that drips from royalty and must be caught cataloged and, yes, sometimes kept. You might have thought yesterday's imperial hair duties were as strange as things could get. But no, not in the Mughal Empire. Not where bodily fluids, shadows, dreams, and even footprints could become political currency. You've barely chewed your breakfast, some lentils, a mango slice, one suspiciously squishy fig, before a slim man in shimmering blue appears at your door. "I am Parwaz," he says, bowing dramatically. "Collector of dew, humble wrangler of the emperor's divine perspiration." You blink. Sorry of what he raises a small golden vial. The emperor glistens, and I gather the shimmer. You decide not to press further. You're led through a corridor lined with wind chimes made of bone, some from peacocks, others. You're told from deer that died on auspicious moons. The air smells of cardamom and something sharper. Vinegar, maybe salt. Whatever it is, it tickles your throat. You arrive in a room bathed in sunlight, filtered through orange silk curtains. At its center is a dais covered in cushions, each embroidered with tiny elephants and lilies. This is where the emperor practices his morning yogasana, his personal blend of stretching posture and meditation. And you, lucky initiate, are to assist in today's moisture retrieval. See, the Mughal emperors believed their sweat was not merely a waste product, but a substance charged with celestial energy. It is the water of effort, Parwaz explains, dabbing at his own brow with a cloth so fine it's nearly transparent. A trace of willpower condensed. So while the emperor holds a pose, arms outstretched like a lion, about to leap you, and your fellow collectors stand ready with embroidered cloths, gold-plated scoops, and silken blotters. You are to approach only when Parwaz gives the signal, a twitch of the left eyebrow. You wait. The emperor's foot begins to tremble. A bead appears. Twitch, you leap delicately and press the cloth against the curve of the emperor's neck. It's warm. The sweat is scented too, a subtle blend of jasmine and clove. You blot, carefully, reverently, and step back. Twitch. The next collector moves. This continues for 15 minutes. At one point, someone stumbles, and a rogue drop falls onto the cushion. Parwaz gasps as if someone dropped the royal baby. Quick, he hisses, blot the cushion, turn it upside down, say nothing. You do as you're told. Historians still debate whether the practice was symbolic or sincere. Some argue it was tied to ancient Persian customs, where rulers were considered semi-divine, and every physical aspect, breath, blood, sweat, was preserved or sanctified. Others believe it was more about ritual theater, an extravagant way of showcasing control, discipline, and devotion in a palace that ran on spectacle. But there's another reason too, medicine. You learn that a royal hakim or physician would sometimes request a sample of the emperor's sweat to gauge his inner balance. The Mughal elite followed the Unani system, which revolved around bodily humors, blood phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Sweat was thought to reflect these humors in real time. Too salty, Parwaz explains. Too much bile. Too sweet, sugar in the blood. Too dry, melancholy. You glance at your cloth now drying in the sun. Is it salty? Sweet, should you sniff it, you decide not to. Later, you assist in bottling the collected samples. Each is poured into a tiny vial shaped like a tulip and sealed with beeswax. Labels are added describing time, mood activity, and body zone. Third sunbeam of morning stretch, right shoulder, calm mood, medium vigor. Yes, really. Sometimes Parwaz whispers, we mix it into perfume. Your face freezes. He chuckles. Just a trace, mixed with sandalwood, cardamom, and ambergris. It becomes the scent of kings. You wonder if you've ever unwittingly worn royal sweat before. It wouldn't surprise you. And then there's the annual collection of the thunderdew. The emperor, during monsoon season, would stand in the rain wearing white silk. His body would glisten both from rain and his own exertion. The collectors would rush forward with massive embroidered cloths, scooping and wringing them into vats of rosewater. The result, a rare substance used only during coronations or extreme illness. Historians still argue whether this was ever truly done. Parwaz admits placing a jar on the shelf. Some say it's a myth, but look closely at that label. You lean in, rain-drenched vigor, year of the blue eclipse. Maybe it wasn't a myth after all. The room grows quiet as the emperor finishes his poses and retreats for his morning bath. The collectors bow deeply as he passes. You do too, cloth still damp in your hand. When he's gone, Parwaz turns to you. You did well today. Your hands are steady. Your silence commendable. Most spill on their first try. You flush with pride, which is ridiculous, given what you're proud of. Before you leave, he hands you a token, a tiny cloth square embroidered with a golden droplet. Your first drop, he says. You carry it with you all the way back to your quarters, half disgusted, half amazed. That night, as the warm air drapes over you like gauze, you think about the effort behind the grandeur. Every glisten, every glow carefully orchestrated. It's easy to forget that even emperors sweat. That power leaks droplet by droplet, and sometimes someone has to catch it. As you drift off, you wonder what your own sweat would say about you. Too salty, too tired. Maybe just curious. You awake with a start, half dreaming that someone's chasing you through a forest with a towel, shouting something about left armpit first. You sit up sweating, not enough for collection, thankfully, and realize today's assignment is already at your door. She's tiny, no taller than your shoulder, wrapped in a sari the color of dusk. Her voice, when she speaks, is gentle but firm. Today, she says, "You come with me." You blink, where she smiles without showing teeth. Smiles to the Hall of Shadows. Not ominous at all. As it turns out, the Hall of Shadows is not a torture chamber or some secret dungeon, as your sleepy brain feared, but a quiet, velvet-draped room in the palace's eastern wing. Here, the Mughal emperor's most delicate ritual takes place, not a grooming, not a gesture of grandeur, but something infinitely stranger. You are to assist the imperial shade watchers. Yes, shade, shadow, the absence of light, because in the court of the great Mughal, even your shadow could be considered a matter of state. You step into the room and are enveloped in silence. Everything is soft pillows, carpets, even the air itself feels padded. The only light comes from narrow slits high on the walls, allowing thin blades of sunshine to fall across a smooth marble floor. In the center of the room stands a man. He's motionless, arms at his sides, eyes closed. A single sliver of light cuts across his body, and beneath him, his shadow. Two women crouch beside it, one with a silk measuring tape, the other with a tiny brush and ink. They're tracing the outline, carefully, reverently. This, your guide explains, is the Ruka Parchai, the soul's reflection. Once a week, the emperor's shadow is measured and documented. Why, you whisper, she tilts her head, to see if his soul is expanding or shrinking, right? Obviously, you're handed a scroll, a shadow log. Each page records dimensions, shoulder width, arm length, foot placement. There are notations like strong angle today, and curve of heel suggests agitation. Some pages are marked with tiny drawings, stick figure outlines, with elegant calligraphy flowing around them like vines. You try not to laugh, but honestly, it's beautiful. Historians still argue whether this practice had any real political weight. Some believe it was symbolic, a spiritual check-in, like a soul's weather report. Others think it had more pragmatic roots. One theory suggests the emperor's shadow was used to monitor physical health. If his stance shifted or his limbs drooped, it might signal fatigue or illness. And in an empire built around a single man's presence, any sign of weakness mattered. But others believe something more esoteric was at play. There are old texts, your guide says, that claim shadows hold energy, that the way a shadow bends or breaks can foretell omens, that a ruler's projected self must be nurtured, studied, even protected. Which is why you're here now holding a fine bristled brush made from mongoose tail, tasked with dusting the shadow's edge. Yes, you're dusting a shadow. You glide the brush across the floor where the emperor's silhouette kisses the marble. Keeps the border clean, your guide says. We need sharp edges. Of course you do. Nearby, another assistant uses a jade prism to reflect a beam of sunlight at a precise angle. Too much light and the shadow fades, she murmurs. Too little and it grows distorted. Balance, always balance. As the session continues, you notice the Emperor shifts slightly. Just a foot no more, but immediately the team reacts. Someone marks the new position, another erases a small portion of the drawing and redraws it in real time. Every movement matters, your guide says. If his shadow becomes crooked, the astrologers must be consulted, and they are. At noon, a man in golden robes enters, carrying a scroll of stars and a string of beads. He hums to himself as he circles the drawing, muttering calculations. Then solemnly he announces, "The Emperor's soul bends westward today, favorable for legal decrees, unfavorable for marriage proposals." You nod as if this makes sense. Later, you're taken to the Shadow Archive. Rows upon rows of scrolls, paintings, tracings on silk, decades of recorded shadows. You run your hand over one from Emperor Akbar's youth. His shadow is thin, like a sapling barely broader than his actual frame. And then another years later, his silhouette wider shoulders set like the pillars of a temple. You can see him aging, your guide whispers. Like a tree growing taller, there's even a tracing from a day of grief when his son died. The shadow is slumped, head dipped, the lines are smudged. A note reads, "Shadow broken, session shortened." It breaks your heart a little. There are strange shadows too, one labeled Double Light Day, showing twin silhouettes due to a rare sky condition. Another labeled Shadowless, when clouds erased the Emperor's projection entirely. That one has an asterisk and a warning, no decrees issued, ill-omened. You ask if shadows were ever tampered with, if enemies ever tried to forge or steal them. The guide looks horrified. Stealing a man's shadow is the same as cursing his bloodline. Apparently, one poor scribe once made an error in the Emperor's shoulder curve. His ink blotch looked like a hunch. Within days, rumors of illness spread across the kingdom. Trade slowed, ambassadors paused their visits. The Emperor had to appear shirtless at a festival, arms out to prove his strength. You are now very afraid of your brush. As the session ends, the Emperor departs in silence, his real shadow gliding alongside him like a ghostly twin. You bow not just to him, but to the fading mark on the floor, still crisp, still sacred. Your guide places a scroll into your hands. "Keep it," she says, "your first shadow. Unofficial, of course, but it's yours. You unfurl it later in your chamber. It's simple, just a quick outline, but there it is, your stance, your arms, your shape. You lie back on your mattress, scroll beside you, and stretch your arms up toward the ceiling, casting a faint shadow across the wall. It flickers in the lantern light, soft and unsure. You wonder what it says about you. Still growing, maybe. Still unfolding. You've traced shadows caught, sweat whispered to parrots, and swatted at royal flies. You thought perhaps you'd seen the weirdest the Mughal court had to offer. But no, because today you're summoned by a man wearing the 3 belts, 2 monocles, and a hat shaped like a lotus. "I am Hafiz-ul-Khayal," he declares with a bow so deep his forehead brushes the ground. "The guardian of dreams." You take an involuntary step back. He smiles wide and serene. "Come, today we map the Emperor's sleep." And just like that, you're swept into the strange silken world of the royal dream interpreters, the nighttime soothsayers, whose job is to collect, decode, and archive every single dream the emperor ever has. And yes, that includes the ones about flying, falling, or showing up late to court without your turban. The room where you're trained smells faintly of nutmeg and night-blooming jasmine. The walls are painted a deep indigo speckled with tiny stars, and the floor is scattered with cushions, each embroidered with symbols: moons, eyes, ladders, birds. This, Hafiz says, is the chamber of quiet slumber. It's beautiful and weird, but mostly beautiful. You are handed a dream log, bound in velvet, edged in gold. Its pages are crisp and empty, waiting. The emperor's sleep, Hafiz explains, is no mere rest. It is a message from the cosmos, a thread in the fabric of fate. We must catch it like fishermen of the invisible. You raise a hand. And if he doesn't remember his dream, Hafiz's expression turns solemn. Then we must reconstruct it from clues. Which is how you find yourself later that evening, sitting beside the emperor's bed. Yes, his actual bed. But don't worry, it's more awkward than intimate. You and two others kneel on low stools, utterly silent, while the emperor dozes beneath a quilt of gold thread. A water clock ticks softly in the corner. A bowl of sandalwood ash burns faintly, releasing sleepy smoke into the room. You wait, and eventually, he stirs. You lean forward, holding your breath. He mumbles something: river, dog with wings. Hafiz nods, already scribbling. Excellent. Symbolic transformation. Water to air. Watch the beast. You're handed the transcription duty. You write third hour. Dog with wings. River crossing. Lightness of mood. When the emperor finally rises, yawning, Hafiz bows deeply. May your night speak truth, Majesty. Later, the dream is analyzed by a full team. Symbol experts, astrologers, even a scent specialist who claims certain fragrances drift into dreams and alter them. There's a minor argument about whether the dog signifies loyalty or betrayal. Historians still argue Hafiz tells you, flipping through a dream log from Emperor Jahangir, whether these sessions ever influenced real policy. Some say, yes, a dream of fire might delay a battle. Others say it was all performance. But look here, Jahangir once dreamed of a broken sword. The next morning, he canceled a treaty signing. That broken sword is sketched in the margin, with a sad face drawn next to it. Of course, not all dreams are ominous. There's one log describing a time Emperor Akbar dreamt of flying through a field of giant mangoes. That day, he hosted a mango-eating contest. Another dream involved a mirror that wouldn't reflect. The court responded by commissioning enchanted mirrors from Persia. Even dreams, Hafiz says, can shape the waking world. But your real challenge comes during dream reconstruction, the process used when the emperor wakes with no memory at all. That night, he sleeps deeply, but wakes silent. Shrugs, no dreams. Hafiz gasps. Impossible. You're taken back to the bedchamber. The team begins investigating like detectives at a crime scene. Look at the blanket fold, one says. Tight grip, perhaps tension. His pillow was tossed, another murmurs. He turned surely. That suggests conflict. There's even a man who measures the position of the emperor's footmarks on the floor as he stepped out of bed. Finally, a consensus is reached. Likely a dream of entrapment, possibly a labyrinth, potentially involving parental symbolism. You blink. All that. From pillow fluff, they nod. The dream is written labyrinthine struggle, possible ancestral reckoning. Advise against signing any new trade agreements today. You don't know whether to laugh or be impressed. So you do both quietly. By the third night, you're beginning to notice something strange. The Emperor seems to enjoy the attention. He wakes with a gleam in his eye, offers little dream fragments, just to watch Hafiz's eyebrows rise. I was eating grapes that turned into stars. My elephant shrank into a teacup. Hafiz writes furiously. Brilliant. Restraint transformation. Cosmic digestion. You whisper to a fellow scribe. Do you think he's making them up? The scribe shrugs. Even gods must entertain themselves. In the archive, you find some truly wild entries. One emperor dreamed of turning into a carp and swimming through a marketplace. He woke up and abolished a salt tax. Another dreamed he lost his voice. The next day, he refused to speak during court. All decrees were passed by written note for a week. Some dreams became part of royal legend. One tale, possibly apocryphal, claims Emperor Humayun dreamed of a red horse galloping across the moon. The next day, a red comet was spotted in the sky. Proof Hafiz whispers that dreams ripple both ways. Past into future, future into now. One night you're asked to sleep in the dream chamber yourself. To calibrate your imagination, Hafiz says. You lie on a cool stone bed beneath a quilt that smells of lavender and dust. The incense curls around you. You drift. You dream of a scroll that writes itself, of a bird that sings in your own voice, of a shadow that chases you through a field of peacock feathers. When you wake, Hafiz is already at your side. What did you see? He asks, eyes bright. You tell him. He nods slowly. Excellent. You'll be ready soon. You don't know what that means, but it sounds nice. Later, you're given your first official dream sash, a length of embroidered silk-colored midnight blue, worn only by certified interpreters. A recorder of the invisible Hafiz calls you. As you return to your quarters, sash around your waist, you think back to the Emperor's winged dog. Was it a warning, a joke, a figment of spiced dinner? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the point is that even in his dreams, the Emperor was never alone. He was watched, protected, interpreted, and now you are too. You're adjusting to your new life. As a certified interpreter of dreams, just beginning to enjoy the strange serenity of the Mughal night palace, when you're reassigned without warning, without explanation. A hand-delivered scroll, the Emperor's wax seal. Hurry, the courier whispers. He's waiting in the Hall of Winds. You gulp. That's not the name of a room that welcomes sleep. The Hall of Winds is tall and echoing, draped in sheer silk curtains that dance with the breeze, even when no windows are open. In its center stands a long, narrow table. Upon it, something shimmers, dozens of miniature contraptions, each whirring and ticking like a music box factory had a fever dream. This, your new superior announces with relish, is your next role, celestial timekeeper, a job that sounds glamorous, until you realize what it actually involves. You, dear dream scribe, are now responsible for syncing the emperor's every movement with the heavens. When he eats, when he prays, when he thinks, when he blinks too long. Well, maybe not that last part, but you're not entirely sure anymore. This empire doesn't run on time. Time runs on the empire. At your disposal, star charts the size of carpets, hourglasses carved from amber, sundials that hiss in the sun, and the pièce de résistance, a mechanical astrolabe that hums with something suspiciously like attitude. Your mentor is an old man named Ishfaq. He's hunched cranky and smells permanently of cinnamon and ink. The stars he growls on your first night don't wait for courtiers. They rule above. We just try to keep up. You nod solemnly, clutching your new toolkit, a compass, a moon dial, and something called a shadow wand. Your job begins before dawn. You rise in the black hour when the palace is still dreaming and climb to the observatory tower. The wind there is sharp, always sharp. Your hands tremble with cold as you align mirrors and draw angles in the air. Down below, the city still sleeps, but above you, the sky is shouting. Venus pulses low over the eastern horizon. A cluster of stars, Pleiades, twinkles like a spilled necklace. You record everything in the Takvim register, the empire's official celestial log. Second hour, Venus bright, east wind, favorable. Your notes determine everything. If Mars is too near the moon, the emperor postpones meetings. If Jupiter seems smug, trade ships delay their launch. Historians still argue. Ishfaq mutters one day whether Akbar truly believed in the stars or just liked the excuse to cancel paperwork. Still, the rituals are precise. Each planetary alignment affects the palace's rhythm. Food served early if Mercury shines clear. Rituals delayed if Saturn scowls. You once get blamed for a royal stomachache. You misread the solar incline, a minister hisses. Too much turmeric was served too soon. You didn't even know turmeric had a zodiac sign. But you learn. You learn to trace sun shadows across the courtyard tiles. You learn the secret meanings of star movement, upward for ambition, inward for danger. You learn how to whisper the time of day in poetic riddles. The hour is the color of wet sandalwood, you murmur one afternoon. It means nap time, and the emperor listens. Because he believes that his breath is part of the cosmos, that each heartbeat is a drum in the universe's song. So your job isn't just timekeeping, it's tuning, calibrating the body of the emperor to the beat of the world. You begin to enjoy it. There's a meditative quality to it all. The silence of the early morning, the hush of silk robes and dark corridors, the way time feels soft and stretchable like warm wax. One evening, you're given a new assignment: oversee the royal hour of silence. This hour, invented by Emperor Jahangir himself, is meant to align personal reflection with the passing of Sirius across the southern sky. No one speaks. Not the cooks, not the guards, not even the parrots, though they usually cheat. You light the ceremonial lantern, shaped like a lotus, and pace slowly through the marble corridors, checking that all remains still. In that hour, the palace glows differently. People pause in their thoughts. The Empress herself once simply sits and watches the shadows move across her palms. You realize that timekeeping here isn't about clocks or control, it's about presence. Each moment becomes holy. And yet, just when you feel you've finally mastered this strange art, a problem arises. The stars flicker. One night, while charting the sky, you notice a strange dimming of Polaris. It pulses oddly. You rub your eyes, then a second star Arcturus blinks just once. You rush down to tell Ishfaq. He frowns deeply. Could be cloud, could be omen. You report it anyway. The emperor calls a private council. Astrologers, weather readers, even a man who claims to hear constellations in his sleep. They debate for hours. Eventually, it's declared the stars are restless. We must recalibrate the clock of fate. That means a full palace reset. Meal times shifted, court audiences rescheduled, even the palace musicians retune their flutes based on a new celestial ratio. It's chaos, but quiet chaos, Mughal chaos, elegant and silk-lined. Some mutter that the emperor is overreacting. Others whisper better to obey the stars than defy them. A week later, the stars shine clear again. You never learn what really caused the flicker. Maybe dust, maybe divine message, but that week teaches you something crucial. In the Mughal Empire, even uncertainty has a schedule. Even mystery gets logged in the register. You return to your tower, eyes lifted to the sky, and smile. After all, how many people get to say they kept time with the stars? The starlit schedule has softened your edges. You've grown accustomed to days that follow the heavens and hours that unfold like poetry. But the empire, grand and gleaming, is not just marble and moonlight. It's also sweat and smell. Because tonight, dear dreamer, you descend from the tower to take on one of the strangest, least discussed, and surprisingly vital roles in the Mughal court the royal knows. Yes, not a nickname, not a metaphor, a job. You are to become a smell tester of the throne room. You're laughing now, but hold your breath. The Mughal emperors, especially Shah Jahan, were obsessed with fragrance. Obsessed not just with the sweet, but also with the strange, and not only for pleasure, but for power. It's said that Shah Jahan could identify over 60 scents with his eyes closed: musk, saffron, rose, sandalwood, even crushed emeralds soaked in snowmelt. Historians still argue whether his nose was truly that refined, mutters your new mentor, an impossibly elegant man named Sajjad. But ours must be sharper. Your task, Sajjad explains, is simple in theory. Maintain the perfect scent profile in all imperial spaces, especially the throne room, where the emperor must be enveloped in an invisible cloud of majesty. Air is the first impression, he says, and the last defense. You blink, defense. He raises a vial. Many poisons begin with the nose. Bitter almonds, rotting cloves. A misstep in scent could mean death. Oh, suddenly this feels less like aromatherapy and more like espionage. You're trained in the art of nasal layering, how to identify not just individual aromas, but combinations. Rose and vetiver may blend well. Sajjad hums, but rose and vinegar, catastrophe. Your mornings now begin in the fragrance gallery, a marble hall filled with glass jars, each labeled in looping Persian script. Some you recognize: cinnamon, cardamom, lemon peel. Others, not so much. Deer gland. Sajjad announces, handing you a cloth. Used sparingly, it anchors floral notes. Too much, and the emperor will smell like a startled goat. You suppress a cough and write it down. There are also surprise drills. At lunch, Sajjad suddenly presses a sachet beneath your nose. Identify you gag, garlic, and burned wool. He nods. Correct. Disgusting. Never let this near the imperial couch. Eventually, you graduate to field work. The throne room, it turns out, is a scent battleground. Courtiers bring their own perfumes. Guards sweat in their armor. Visitors trail in the dust of distant lands. Even the parrots have an opinion. You conduct daily scent checks before court begins. First, you clear the air with oud smoke, wafted gently using a peacock feather fan. Then comes the layering saffron water misted over cushions, a few drops of jasmine oil rubbed beneath the arms of the throne, and finally sandalwood paste dotted on the marble floor like invisible landmines of serenity. Your nose tingles constantly. Your head swims. You smell roses even in your dreams. And yet it's strangely beautiful. There's an art to it, a rhythm, like music, but for the air. One morning, you detect a sharp, vinegary tang in the throne room. Faint, almost nothing, but something's off. You stop everything, halt the courtiers, bow to the emperor. "Forgive me, Majesty," you whisper. "There is vinegar in the wind." Everyone freezes. A search reveals a servant had spilled a jar of pickled mangoes, illegally smuggled in as a bribe offering. You are rewarded with a golden vial and a new title, Perfumer of Presence. You don't know what that means, but it looks impressive on your tunic. Later, you're invited to join a secret council, the Circle of Scent. It meets once a week beneath the moon in a chamber lit by floating candles. Each member presents a new blend. Tonight's theme is power. Sajjad offers a blend of crushed rose petals, iron filings, and dew collected from a lion's paw print. You present something simpler, lemon-crushed mint and rainwater from the palace roof. They nod solemnly. Bold one says, "Uplifting." Another smells like the beginning of a rebellion. You beam, yet not at all is fragrance and praise. One day you are summoned to inspect a smell complaint. The emperor's bedchamber smells wrong. He frowns. It feels heavy. Like old thoughts, you conduct a full sweep. Under the cushions behind the drapes. And there it is, a dead bee crushed beneath the window frame. Tiny, but its decay taints the delicate balance. You remove it with tweezers, cleanse the space with rose water and clove smoke, and the emperor sighs in relief. "Better," he says, "now I can dream." And you smile, because you know this is more than perfume. This is emotional engineering. You are not just scenting a room, you are shaping how people feel when they enter it. A waft of lavender for calm, a drop of amber for dignity, a hint of mint to sharpen the mind, and sometimes nothing at all, just clean air, the space between breaths. You start leaving notes in the margins of your scent logs. Today, the emperor's mood was citrus bright. Rain smell mixed with sorrow today, likely nostalgia. A new visitor smells of distant firewood. Foreign cautious. Soon others begin reading them. A minister approaches you. What does the scent say about my new turban oil? You sniff, overconfident, with a hint of misplaced ambition. He blinks. Fair, you're building something unexpected. A reputation, a new kind of court wisdom. Eventually, you're asked to design a seasonal scent cycle, a year-long fragrance calendar to match monsoons, harvests, festivals, and even eclipses. Spring is citrus and silk. Summer is jasmine and rain. Autumn is vetiver and memory. Winter is saffron and old stories. And as the cycle turns, so do you. You've come a long way from that stargazing, dream-chasing novice. Now even the air listens when you enter a room. You're lounging beneath a lattice of flowering vines, recovering from a particularly heady blend of winter saffron and rose ash when the summons arrives. Another scroll, another seal, another job. You sigh. Surely there can't be anything stranger than being the Empire's olfactory oracle. But you'd be wrong, because this time you're not going up or down, you're going sideways to the Department of Shadows. You don't even know the palace had one. The attendant, a small man in a gold-trimmed hood, beckons you with a finger and says nothing the entire walk. You descend a spiral staircase that twists deeper than logic, past murals of sleeping cats and whispered warnings about mirrors. Finally, you reach a hall made of black marble. The candles here don't flicker. They burn straight with blue flames. Welcome to your next position, Royal Shade Measurer. Yes, your new task is to monitor record and, if necessary, adjust the Emperor's shadow. Still with me, because in the Mughal worldview, shadows aren't just byproducts of light, they're living echoes. Spiritual reflections, unspoken intentions in silhouette form. Historians still argue, says your new superior, an elegant woman named Zara, whether Emperor Akbar truly believed that his shadow contained his soul, but he certainly commissioned enough scrolls about it. Zara hands you a tool set, a brass ruler, a thin string with a pearl weight, and a parchment with a curious chart length of shadow angle, of sunlight corresponding emotional states. According to the chart, short shadows at noon reflect clarity and dominance. Long shadows at dawn symbolize contemplation and vulnerability. Uneven shadows. Danger, deception, possible possession. You're not making this up. Zara shows you how to measure the Emperor's shadow each day during 3 sacred intervals: sunrise, solar zenith, and twilight. Each session is ceremonial. You kneel on embroidered mats and wait for the Emperor to appear cloaked in his usual silks, as still as a statue. He knows the ritual by heart. He simply stands. You do the rest. You measure. You sketch. You whisper the readings. And if the shadow's shape looks off, you note it in the Book of Reflected Rains, a centuries-old volume containing every Mughal emperor's shadow profile since Babur himself. You flip through the pages and find entries like Shah Jahan's dawn shadow bifurcated, possibly due to emotional unrest. Humayun's noon shadow curved consulted the court astrologer. Aurangzeb's twilight shadow, extremely sharp, proceed with caution. And now your turn to write the emperor's. You get good at it. You learn how different materials, sandstone, silk, jade floors, change how shadows behave. You start noticing things. If the emperor's shadow merges with that of a minister too quickly, it could indicate influence or flattery. If his shadow is pale and thready at twilight, perhaps he's losing energy or interest. One day you find the emperor's shadow flickering, despite no wind, no flame, no motion. You pause. Zara nods. That's a warning. Tomorrow, triple incense. Keep him grounded. You do as instructed, and oddly enough, the flicker doesn't return. Coincidence? Maybe, but in this job, everything means something. There's also a ceremonial room just for shadow study, the mirrorless hall. No reflections allowed, just natural light white floors and silence. You learn the philosophy that a ruler's shadow reveals his true path, what lies behind, what clings to him, what grows longer the further he walks. In a whisper, Zara confides that once a Mughal emperor canceled a battle campaign because his twilight shadow resembled a spear pointed back at his own heart. True, you ask? She shrugs. Real enough to him. Of course, not everyone respects your work. One particularly smug advisor scoffs. Shadow lengths, a child's distraction, until you pull him aside one morning and point at his own reflection on the marble. Your shadow curls when the emperor enters. You might want to reconsider your ambitions. He avoids you ever after. Still, your work remains subtle. Most days, you're simply there, kneeling, measuring, logging. But your observations start to influence quiet decisions. A delayed verdict, a rescheduled journey, a sudden gift of honey and silver to a tired advisor whose shadow told you more than words ever could. And sometimes, the emperor speaks to you directly. What does my shadow say today, he murmurs, not looking at you. You hesitate, then say softly, it's long and sharp like a mountain at dusk. He nods, satisfied. Good. That means I still matter. You never know if he's joking. That's part of the job. But then comes the night of the shadow eclipse. It happens rarely, once every few decades. A phenomenon where during a lunar eclipse, the emperor's shadow is said to disappear entirely for a breathless moment. You prepare for it with Zara dusting the floor with powdered pearl to better track the transition. The emperor stands in silence. The moon dims. A shadow overshadows. And for a moment, just a sliver of time, his outline vanishes. No feet, no hands, no crown. Just the man standing alone in his own absence. When it returns, it's softer, curled, at rest. And something changes after that. The emperor begins sleeping longer, laughing more, writing strange poetic orders like today shall smell of almonds and memories. Zara grins. You've done well. You've helped him see himself. You blink. Through his shadow, she nods. Sometimes that's the only way. You realize then that this empire thrives not just on battles or beauty, but on reflection, on the hidden details, the scent in the air, the angle of the sun, the length of a shadow on a quiet afternoon. And you, dear Nightwalker, are the unseen keeper of those truths. Your feet now move like water across palace floors. With each strange post you've held, you've begun to understand a quiet truth. The Mughal Empire is not held together by armies, not entirely by gold, nor even by the emperor's will alone. It is rather stitched together by rituals, strange, delicate, unspoken little habits that give the whole glorious machine its breath. And speaking of breath, your next assignment is, well, different, not exactly glamorous, not as poetic as shadows or as heady as scent, but important, vital even. You're to become a royal sleeper. You blink at the letter. No, really, says the courier. They want you to nap, on command. And so begins your service in the Imperial Slumber Corps. You've never heard of such a thing. Few have. It's a department so secretive, most courtiers assume the men and women in its ranks are merely ornamental, serene background furniture, lounging in palace corners. But you quickly learn that being a royal sleeper is serious business. You are now part of a centuries-old experiment in perfect rest, an initiative begun under Emperor Jahangir, refined by Shah Jahan, and curated obsessively by his successors. Historians still argue your new instructor, a yawning old man named Abdul, tells you whether Jahangir created the Corps for health or espionage. But either way, we nap for the Empire. The job is deceptively complex. Your main tasks to sleep publicly and peacefully multiple times a day in rotating palace locations, providing a model of ideal rest to all who see you. It reminds the court, Abdul explains, that rest is not weakness, sleep is not shame, it is divine permission. You learn how to doze with elegance. There are lessons in napping posture, sideways hand, beneath the cheek, a light furrow in the brow, to suggest dreaming, not unconsciousness. You're issued a sleep wardrobe silk robes, dyed in calming tones. Lavender, pearl gray, cloud blue. You're taught breathing cadences to mimic ideal sleep rhythms meant to soothe passers-by and lull anxious ministers into better decisions. And yes, sometimes you're asked to sleep on purpose near certain volatile court members just to spread calm like invisible perfume. You're a living lullaby. Your shifts rotate between nap stations, the garden hammock for warm afternoons, the story niche where poets recite you soft verses as you drift off, the moon pavilion reserved for night watch naps beneath the stars. But there's more. Some days you are sent to sleep test new chambers to determine if the architecture itself supports restful energy. You enter a room, lie down, and attempt a nap, then log the results. Too echoey, you mark it. Smells like old mangoes. You make a note. Dreamed of falling. You record it and flag it as a potential omen. You become sensitive to the tiniest disturbances. A cushion too lumpy. A breeze too sharp. A silence too tight. It's not laziness, it's detective work done in stillness. Soon, you're trusted with even more unusual duties, like nightward patrol, a special shift where you pretend to sleep in halls where whispers gather and secrets crawl. Somehow, no one suspects the sleeper is listening, and listen you do. You learn things, small things, but powerful. Whispers of discontent, plans for new court factions, secret loves that threaten to ripple outward. You report what matters, discard what doesn't, always with the gentle hands of someone whose job is to soothe, not destroy. And then one day the emperor himself requests your presence. You're brought to the quiet chamber, a small round space surrounded by heavy velvet and the scent of saffron milk. He lies on a divan staring at the ceiling. "I cannot sleep," he says. You bow. "Would you like me to demonstrate majesty?" He nods once. So you lie nearby just far enough, just close enough, and begin your routine. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Let the eyelids lower like silk curtains. Drift, don't dive. Sleep must come like a guest, not a thief. Eventually, the emperor sighs, then closes his eyes, then sleeps. You stay beside him until dawn. The next morning, he says only this: have a special robe made for them, with gold thread at the cuffs. From then on, you're called the drowsing whisper. Some laugh behind your back. Professional napper, they scoff. But others begin requesting your presence. The royal gardener asks you to nap among his tulips to see if their arrangement invites dreams. A general invites you into his war tent before a campaign to infuse it with peace before battle. Even poets come sitting nearby hoping to catch phrases from your murmured sleep. And oh, the dreams. They become vivid, strange, rich with symbols. You begin to keep a dream journal, a tiger made of parchment, a staircase into a lake, the emperor as a cloud drifting over a battlefield that never ends. Zara from the Shadows Department sometimes visits you reading your dreams like maps. Your mind walks the empire, she says softly. Even in sleep, you're of service. Eventually, you're given a final sacred task to sleep beside the peacock throne during its polishing. The throne itself, jewel-encrusted, shimmering with celestial symbolism, must be tended only during its quietest hour. Your job is to lie beside it as they polish its gold and gems your calm presence meant to protect the throne's energy. You've never been more honored as you lie there breathing slowly, surrounded by whispered prayers and the soft rasp of cloth on ruby. You feel something stir inside you. Not pride, not sleep, but peace. You've come so far through perfumes and shadows, through stargazing and silence to this moment. And somehow every odd job has led here to the quiet, steady truth that rest is power. You are no longer just a dreamer. You are the empire's dream. Sleep still clings to your lashes when you receive your next summons. This time, the letter is scented not with the usual floral ink, but with something sharper, oily, metallic, almost zesty. You squint at the wax seal and eagle holding a spoon. Strange. Then again, you've stopped expecting normal. Your next role is unlike any you've held before. It's not about shadows or dreams or even silent presence. It's about taste. You've been selected to join the elite secretive circle known as the Zai Parak Mandal, or more whimsically, the Mughal Tongue Guild. You are now an imperial flavor interpreter. And your first lesson, the Emperor's palate is not just a matter of pleasure, it's a language, a delicate dialect of spice, texture, and memory. Each dish, says your new mentor, a curt woman named Rana, is a sentence, and every bite is a word. Your job is to read it. You're intrigued and hungry. Your training begins with an unusual test. You're blindfolded, seated before an array of small copper bowls, and told to describe what you taste, but not using food terms. Instead, you must describe the emotion of each bite. Bowl 1, a cool rose sherbet. You whisper, a silk curtain swaying in the wind. Bowl 2 tamarind-laced lentils. A long-forgotten letter found in the rain. Bowl 3 smoked goat with cloves. A thunderstorm wearing velvet boots. Rana nods. You'll do. You spend the next weeks eating everything, and I mean everything. Peacock tongue poached in almond milk, candied petals of the Rajnagandha flower, a lamb dish so spiced it makes your ears ring like temple bells. And then there's tasteless rice, prepared with enchanted mineral water meant to reset the senses. Yes, it's as blank as wet paper, but somehow you taste peace. You learn that meals in the Mughal court aren't just meals. They're coded messages, political hints, emotional barometers. Historians still argue Rana tells you over a bowl of pistachio saffron custard whether Emperor Shah Jahan's refusal to eat mangoes in 1643 was a sign of grief for Mumtaz or a protest against the mango tax. Either way, it sent waves. The emperor you serve, now clever contemplative, likes his messages subtle, and so you're called to interpret. One day he sends for you after a grand banquet. Tell me, he says, gesturing at a tray of leftovers. What did I just say? You examine the dishes, the order in which they were served, which sauces were untouched, which herbs lingered in the broth. You answer slowly. You said you're listening but not convinced, that you want peace but need proof, and that the ambassador from Gujarat should stop oversalting his metaphors. The emperor laughs. Exactly. You're in. Soon you're accompanying him to diplomatic dinners, tasting dishes in advance to read the intentions of foreign chefs. Once a Persian envoy serves a delicate fig compote with a shard of bitter orange. You whisper, they flatter us, but they've come with a sting. The emperor nods and changes the terms of the treaty mid-meal. Another time, a general tries to curry favor literally by preparing a dish too fiery, laced with chilies only a fool would serve royalty. You taste it, wince, and quietly swap the emperor's dish for a cooling melon soup. Later, the general is reassigned to a province known more for its goats than its glory. But your job isn't always about intrigue. Sometimes it's beauty. The kitchens called bawarchikhanas are palatial laboratories. Whole teams of chefs working under imperial silence, producing food that borders on alchemy. Jewel-powdered sweets that glimmer like stars, rice dyed with saffron, and marigold shaped like blooming flowers. Once they create a translucent dumpling filled with scented steam. You eat it, and for 3 seconds, taste the memory of your mother's hug. No, really. There's even a dish made with silver leaf and crushed violets said to heal melancholy. You taste it on a moonless night. The flavor unfolds like a lullaby, metallic floral, slightly cold, but comforting. You're tasked with designing entire menus based on moods now. Melancholy rice with milk, and rose slow braised lentils, mint water. Victory spiced meat skewers, dried fruits soaked in rum, caramelized onions and cream. Anxiety white foods, soft textures, gentle heat, no crunch. It becomes a game of edible psychology, and when the emperor grows quiet, too quiet, he sends for you. Read this for me, he says, handing you a single pomegranate seed on a gold spoon. You place it on your tongue, bitter, unripe, clinging to the idea of sweetness, but not quite there. You say softly, "You feel betrayed." He looks away. "By myself, mostly." You don't press. Instead, you prepare him a platter of honeyed figs, cardamom milk, and a spoonful of rose ash. Later, he writes you a poem. It reads, "Some truths are best swallowed, others melt, your reputation spreads." Not everyone loves it. A jealous courtier accuses you of witchcraft, says you're bewitching the emperor with your culinary spells. You respond by sending him a plate of boiled lentils. No salt. He gets the message. But the real joy, it's in the quiet moments. Tasting a dish and discovering a memory hidden in it. Translating nostalgia into spice. Turning diplomacy into dessert. Once a child prince sobs over his porridge. You dip your finger into the bowl, taste it, and say, "He's missing cinnamon. Add just a pinch." The sobbing stops. Later, the emperor tells you you don't just taste food, you taste feelings, and you smile because that's the job. Flavor interpreter, spoon sorcerer, emotional chef whisperer. One day you visit the old spice vault. It holds powders from across the empire, clove from Ceylon cardamom, from Malabar saffron, from Kashmir pepper, from the Konkan. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. Each scent a story. Each bite a sentence in a language few can speak. And as you walk away, your tongue tingling with rose ash and heat, you know one thing for certain. In the Mughal Empire, even the quietest taste can roar like a tiger if you know how to listen. You think you've seen it all by now, slept for the empire, tasted its secrets, bathed in perfume, and walked like a shadow through its labyrinths. But nothing prepares you for what comes next. Your new summons is handwritten, an oddity in itself. The parchment is thick, the ink flecked with crushed pearls, and the message is just 3 words. The empire breathes. There is no seal, no signature, just an address, the house of the imperial breathers. You are about to become a professional breather. No, you didn't read that wrong. And yes, you laughed too at first. Until you arrive at the house. Tucked within the palace complex, it's quiet. It doesn't look like much, just a low structure, surrounded by jasmine hedges with white lattice windows and silk curtains that ripple in rhythm to a breeze that somehow, curiously, doesn't seem to touch anything else. Inside, you are greeted by a woman dressed in plain cotton. Her voice is low, almost reverent. "You're here," she says. "Come, let us teach you how to inhale." You want to say, "I already know how," but something in her gaze stops you. You follow her into a room so silent, your own heartbeat feels like a drum. At its center is a mat. Nothing else. "You may sit," she says, "or lie down, or stand on one leg, however the breath finds you." And so begins your induction into the most abstract yet vital role of all. You are not here to entertain, defend, cook, or clean. You are here to breathe for the emperor, literally. Each breath you take is part of a vast ceremonial effort to balance the empire's air, its moods, its energies, even its elemental forces. Sounds ridiculous, yes. but only until you realize how seriously it's taken. Because according to ancient court texts, one's even Akbar reportedly consulted, the empire is a living being. It inhales, it exhales. Its rhythm is affected by everything war drought music, even rumors. And it is the task of the imperial breathers to keep that rhythm steady. Historians still argue your instructor whispers whether this practice began as an actual ritual or a symbolic one. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Breath is real, symbol or not, it moves things. So what exactly do? You breathe on schedule. You breathe in assigned formations. You breathe at sunrise, mid-morning, noon dusk, and midnight. Sometimes you must synchronize your breath with others, your collective inhale echoing like waves through the palace. Other times you're assigned solo resonance, a kind of atmospheric tuning meant to recalibrate a specific room after something turbulent has occurred there. When a royal astrologer faints during a lunar eclipse, you go to his chamber and breathe there. When a forbidden love letter is discovered in the imperial library, you're sent to exhale forgiveness into the bookshelves. You're given training in controlled breathwork, long inhales that mimic wind over wheat fields. Short exhalations meant to mirror bird calls, breath, holding that simulates the moment before thunder cracks. One session involves mimicking the breath of a dying fire, a sequence of slow gasps, sighs, and barely there warmth. It leaves you lightheaded for hours, but oddly peaceful. You also become familiar with smoke breath rituals. These involve incense, rare complex blends of frankincense, vetiver myrrh, and Himalayan pine. You breathe in the smoke in precise patterns, releasing it slowly through pursed lips while seated in certain directions, depending on the season. There's even a sandalwood sonata, a breath meditation done to the sound of flute and sitar, said to align the emperor's pulse with the stars. It's all so strange, so gentle, and yet you begin to see it. After just a week of training, you're more attuned. You can tell when someone is lying, not by their eyes, but their breath. You know when a room has carried too much sadness. You walk into a corridor and feel that it needs a breath, so you give it one. There are, of course, challenges. One day, you're sent to balance the royal stables after an elephant rampage. Yes, an actual rampage. Your job: breathe near the disturbed animals gently, calming them with a rhythm learned from years of palace breathing scrolls that describe how wind, when still, can soothe even a god. You manage 6 hours before one of the elephants falls asleep beside you. The trainer calls you a miracle in a tunic. Another time, a tense diplomatic banquet nearly collapses into chaos after a wine toast goes sour. You and 2 other breathers are smuggled in as performers. Your only instruments are your lungs. You sit on cushions behind a silk screen and begin the triadic peace cycle. 3 patterns of breath: 1, symbolizing earth; 1, water; 1, sky. By dessert, no one remembers the toast. They only remember feeling calmer. Eventually, the emperor invites you for a private demonstration. He says little, just watches. You sit across from him. You breathe. Inhale, a wave of heat against your ribs. Hold, the stillness of a temple courtyard at dawn. Exhale, a quiet door closing without a sound. When it's over, he leans forward. Can breath carry regret? You nod. Then take some of mine, he says. And so, for the first time, you become a breather of sorrows. You lie beside him as he speaks of past wars, lost friends, the weight of a crown forged not of gold, but of sleeplessness. You breathe it all in, hold, then exhale into the night. It's heavy work, strange and invisible, but oh, it changes you. You're not just filling your lungs, you're filling rooms with ease. You're holding peace in your chest, like a secret. You begin leaving little breaths behind, like gifts won in the garden, where a gardener weeps for a dead fig tree. Another in the hallway, where a concubine waits for letters that never come. And sometimes, just sometimes, you feel the empire breathe back. Through a gentle wind in the banyan trees. Through the sigh of curtains at dusk. Through the slow hush that falls over the palace when you begin your nightly rounds. You are a breather now, not of air, but of presence. And long after your lungs go still, your breaths will remain here, woven into the palace stone, tucked between lattice windows, lingering in the silence that follows the last whisper of the day. By now, you move through the palace like a ghost, with purpose, silent, observant, and oddly necessary. You've breathed for balance, whispered into incense, and soothed elephants with lungfuls of invisible calm. You think you've discovered all the oddities this empire has to offer. But one morning, just as you are finishing your dusk to dawn breathwork near the koi ponds, a thin, elderly eunuch shuffles up to you and speaks with a kind of sacred tremble. You are summoned to the wardrobe. You arch a brow. To change, no, he says gravely. To observe. What he means you'll soon learn is that your next role is to serve the Mughal Empire as a royal garment listener. That's right. Not tailor, not washer, not weaver, listener. The idea once again sounds ludicrous until it doesn't. The Mughal emperors, known for their grand silks, velvet robes, and intricate zari embroidery, didn't merely wear clothes, they communed with them. Garments were seen not just as decoration, but as storytellers, bearers of memory, energy, and emotion. Each robe, each turban, each sash woven in the imperial ateliers was imbued with a kind of presence, a trace of whoever touched it. And it was the task of the garment listener to determine what that presence meant. You are guided into a quiet wing of the palace, where light filters through latticed screens, and everything smells of rosewood camphor and folded fabric. There you meet your new mentor, an impossibly small woman in a robe so faded and threadbare it might be invisible in moonlight. She smiles at you with missing teeth and gestures to a low wooden bench beside her. Sit. The cloth speaks best when you do not tower. And so begins your training. First you learn the temperaments of cloth. Silk whispers, cotton hums, wool sighs. You listen not with your ears, but with your skin. Your fingers glide over seams. Feel the tightness of a hurried stitch, the lazy loop of a distracted tailor, the stubbornness of thick thread forced through too small a needle. You are taught to listen to creases, to perfume stains, to the weight of dampness lingering in old cuffs. One afternoon, you examine a crimson shawl from the emperor's hunting wardrobe. You hold it carefully, Close your eyes and feel a trace of tension in the shoulder folds. Too many bows carried at once, your mentor notes. Or perhaps a disobedient falcon. There are scrolls documenting clothing incidents cases where robes carried sorrow or jealousy or even betrayal. Some garments were declared unclean by spirit, not because of dirt, but because of the memories they held. And here you are being trusted to read those memories. Historians still argue your mentor tells you in a whisper one night whether these duties were meant to safeguard the emperor or simply feed his superstition. But either way, the robes remember. You begin to realize just how serious the palace is about this. No imperial robe is ever worn before passing your test. You must check for residual mood. If a robe feels anxious, it is re-scented with vetiver and camphor. If it carries envy, usually in green silk, you note it is left outside, under the moon for 3 nights. One morning, you're asked to examine Akbar's ceremonial winter cloak, a garment so revered it's kept in a sandalwood-lined trunk behind 3 locked doors. You open it with reverence. The cloak is heavy dark indigo, embroidered with silver thread that catches the light like stars. At first, touch its cold, not just in temperature, but in tone. You pause. There's something lingering in the collar. Not anger, not fear, guilt. You report it softly to the steward, who nods. After the siege of Chittorgar, he says. He wore it to dinner that night. Didn't eat a bite. The cloak is sent to the shrine of the palace saint to be purified in incense and prayer. You wonder how many kings throughout history have walked through battles and feasts, alike their robes quietly collecting what their hearts dare not voice. Soon your duties extend beyond garments. You're asked to listen to jewelry too. Turquoise rings that once comforted a dying prince. Pearl earrings from a queen who cried too much. A belt worn during a secret pregnancy. Each item holds an echo, a pressure, a scent, a warmth that shouldn't linger, but does. One of your strangest tasks comes during a royal wedding. The emperor's bride is set to wear a magnificent gown threaded with gold leaf, but the minute it arrives from the atelier, she refuses to touch it. It weeps, she says simply. You are summoned to investigate. You run your palms along the hem. You press your cheek against the inner lining, and yes, there is a dampness to it, not of moisture, but of memory. The gown was stitched by a woman whose daughter had just died. Every loop of gold was pulled through with grief. The solution, a ritual airing 7 nights, hung above the rose garden, surrounded by jasmine torches, with sitar music played at dusk to soften the sadness. By the 8th morning, the bride touches it and smiles. You begin to understand that clothing is memory you wear. Even in your own simple tunic, you feel the difference when it's freshly washed by someone who respects you versus one who doesn't. You feel it in the way the collar sits, in the looseness of the sleeves, in the way the thread sometimes scratches at your nape like a forgotten goodbye. Sometimes your job overlaps with your old ones. A robe that carries too much heat, you breathe it cool. A sash that feels overly proud, you suggest a touch of lavender scent to humble it. One robe, famously, is deemed too dangerous to wear. Woven for a general who died in a fire, it still smells faintly of ash, though it never touched flame. It's kept in a locked chest marked with a simple phrase, "Do not awaken." On quiet nights, you find yourself alone in the wardrobe, fingertips brushing fabrics that will never see daylight again, clothes stitched for weddings that never happened, tunics from prisoners pardoned too late, baby shoes never worn. You listen, you remember, and somehow the garments seem grateful. The empire you see isn't just carved into stone or painted on ceilings. It's worn. It's folded neatly in cedar chests, hung with reverence, passed from generation to generation like lullabies sewn into sleeves. And thanks to you, these memories don't fade. They rustle softly in the dark, waiting for someone to listen. It's early evening and the palace is glowing again. Oil lamps flicker gently behind carved screens, casting patterns like lace across the stone floors. Peacocks cry somewhere in the distance, melancholy, majestic, vaguely annoyed, as if they're tired of how much attention they get. You're sipping on something warm, maybe cardamom milk, maybe just steam, and thinking you've seen it all. Garment listeners, sleep breathers, elephant mood assessors. What else could the empire possibly need? That's when a royal attendant arrives with a small leather-bound notebook pressed reverently to his chest. "You're needed," he says softly, in the Department of Coin Whispers. Of course you are. By now, nothing surprises you. You follow him past sunken courtyards and sandalwood libraries, past walls lined with maps older than memory. Finally, he leads you into a low, windowless room that smells like iron incense and something metallic you can't name. Inside, 5 people sit cross-legged on mats. In front of each lies a small copper bowl filled with coins. Mughal coins, fat, heavy silver discs stamped with calligraphy and crowned with the imperial seal. The oldest woman there looks up, her eyes milky with age, but sharp with knowing. "We are the coin whisperers," she says, "and you are their apprentice. Your new role to divine the mood of the economy. Through sound, no ledgers, no spreadsheets, just coins and the stories they tell." You laugh a little, not unkindly, not out loud, but yes, this is ridiculous, until they hand you a coin and tell you to drop it. You do, and it sings. It's not just the ring of silver on stone, it's the pitch, the echo, the emotion of it. "That one was made during a monsoon," the old woman notes. "See how it hesitates at the end." Another is passed to you duller, heavier. You drop it. It hits the surface like a warning bell. "Minted in famine," says another whisperer. "No silver to mix, mostly tin." It mourns. You're taught to listen for age-alloy ambition. Some coins are bold minted in the heart of empire, gleaming with wealth and confidence. Others are shy cast during war, hurried into circulation, with impurities and blurred inscriptions. A truly rare one, a commemorative Akbar coin, makes almost no sound at all. Just a hush like a secret falling from a great height. The art of coin reading you learn is not just about economy. It's about emotion in circulation. Each coin has passed through hands, hundreds, thousands, across villages, deserts, and borders. Coins that paid for weddings. Coins slipped into hands in farewell. Coins buried in riverbanks during invasions only to be dug up centuries later. And so the whisperers teach you to catalog not just what a coin is, but what it has felt. Every morning you sit cross-legged with a fresh tray of coins and begin your audit. You're handed a batch from Lahore. Clink. Hopeful. You write minted with good silver clean edges. Youthful tone, likely during early rain. Strong morale, another set from Bengal. Clink. Jittery, unsure. You note unstable echo, thin alloy. Inflation suspected, region anxious. And so it goes. You're basically conducting a financial wellness check by listening to spare change. And people mock astrologers. Yet the empire takes this very seriously. Once a week, your findings are read aloud in the Dewan-i-Khas, the emperor's private chamber. Based on your reports, grain prices are adjusted, trade routes reinforced, military stipends recalibrated. Historians still argue, whispers one of the elder readers beside you, whether any of this actually impacted policy or if it merely soothed the emperor's nerves. But nerves in a palace like this are everything. You're shown the whisperer's archives, dusty ledgers filled not with numbers, but coin moods. Whole paragraphs dedicated to the emotional weather of copper in Gujarat or silver purity in Kashmir. It's poetic and slightly unhinged, but oddly accurate. One entry dated in Jahangir's reign reads, "The Southern Mint produced loud, boastful coins this month. Recommend cooling measures in courtly behavior, too much hubris in the dinar." Hubris in the dinar. You can't make this up. But there's science in it too. You learn the sounds change depending on temperature, on humidity, even on who's doing the dropping. One day, a courier from Kabul brings a fresh pouch for analysis. You pour the coins into a dish, but they all sound confused, flat. You sniff the air. Something's wrong, you say aloud. And you're right. These coins are forgeries. The alloy is too soft. They were made to deceive, to sneak into circulation unnoticed. Without numbers or documents, you've just uncovered a smuggling plot. The empire rewards you quietly. A silk robe, an extra ration of mangoes, a subtle nod from the emperor himself. Now you understand why this role exists. In a world where everything visible is carefully crafted, truth must sometimes be heard. By now, you're fluent in the metallic dialect of the Mughal treasury. You even develop favorites, a 1594 quarter rupee that chirps like a bird when dropped just right, a chipped gold coin that only sounds sweet when held at a slant. You begin assigning personalities. This one's grumpy, that one a flirt. Your reports start to include little flourishes. This coin feels tired. Let it rest. This one is homesick. Don't ask me how I know. No one complains. In fact, they say the emperor likes the poetry. One day, you're asked to train someone else, a young boy with keen ears and patient fingers. He drops a coin with too much force. You wince. Again, you whisper softer this time. Let the coin speak. He listens, learns, and suddenly you realize you are the elder now. You've become part of the empire's invisible chorus. First, you breathed for elephants. Then you listened to cloth. And now even coins murmur in your presence. The empire turns great and slow and golden, and you strange little job after strange little job have become one of its steadiest pivots. The boy looks up. What does this one say? You smile, ears tilted, hand open to the echo. It says, "We're not finished yet. The sun is setting again, as it always seems to be in your story, casting long amber shadows that pool like warm tea at the feet of domed pavilions. You've walked the marble corridors of emperors and whispered to the breath of elephants. You've traced the silk-soft hem of palace robes and listened to the anxieties of coins. But now, tonight, you're summoned for the final time. There's only one job left on the roster, one stranger than all the rest, one that in a way brings everything full circle. You are to become a dream scribe. You blink. You wait for someone to tell you it's a joke. But they're not joking. You're handed a quill carved from a vulture's feather and dipped in oil infused with vetiver and myrrh. You're led to a quiet room deep in the heart of the Zenana, the inner women's quarters, though here dreams belong to everyone. Men, women, servants, princes, no rank here, only sleep. The job they tell you is simple. People dream. You write, but not just what they dream. How, why, with what weight, and what color. There's a velvet couch where your first dreamer sleeps, an elderly general with thick white brows and a scar that splits one lip like a faded river. He talks in his sleep, mumbling about mango trees and missing a camel he lost in Baluchistan. You sit nearby and begin your work. You don't write, he dreamed of a mango tree. You write. His breath caught at the sight of yellow fruit, too sweet for his memory. The camel's name was Parveen. The dream was not about longing, it was about forgiveness. You don't know where that came from, but it feels true, and that apparently is the whole art of being a dream scribe. It isn't transcription, it's translation. You render the impossible in terms the waking mind can understand. Over the days, dreamers come and go. Some bring you riddles wrapped in silk. Others shiver in their sleep, chased by things they won't name. You sit, you watch, you listen, and you write. Some dreams are light, fluffy things, like buttered parathas floating in a pond of saffron milk. Others are heavier, darker. The emperor himself dreams of falling over and over again from the tallest minaret. Each time he wakes, his beard is wet with sweat, his hands shaking. Historians still argue a fellow scribe tells you one morning whether these dreams ever shaped imperial policy, or if they were just outlets. But fear is a kind of truth, too. You learn to catalog dreams the way a taxonomist might butterflies. There are amber dreams, soft and slow, with memory baked into every corner. There are knife dreams, sharp flashing, usually from soldiers. And then there are wind dreams, fast, confusing, hard to pin down, often from children or poets or people in love. The strangest ones. Those come from eunuchs. Dreams where identity is a mirror, sometimes fogged, sometimes shattered. Dreams where they walk down long corridors and never reach the end. Dreams where they wear crowns that don't fit. You write each one with care, and never once laugh the dream archives. Where your scrolls are stored are a hush-hush affair, hidden in the lowest library vault behind a false wall lined with poetry. Only 3 keys exist. The emperor holds one, the grand vizier another, and the third is tucked into the sash of your robe, barely noticeable. Inside the archive, dreams rustle like restless silk. Each scroll is marked with the dreamer's initials, the moon phase, and oddly the smell present in the room when the dream occurred. Sandalwood, rain, jasmine, fear. You read some older scrolls entries from Akbar himself. I was both bird and bow. I flew and fell, and yet I hunted myself, meaning unclear, felt holy. And from a concubine who lived 300 years ago, he never sees my face, only my shadow. But in the dream, the shadow dances. I think this means I will outlive him. She did. The scroll confirms it. But here's the most peculiar thing of all. One night you fall asleep at your post. You dream of a glowing elephant with bells for tusks dancing under a sky filled with coins. The ground is cloth breathing gently, and someone not quite you is scribbling it all down in a book that looks suspiciously like this one. When you wake, the other scribes are looking at you. We wrote your dream, they say. You've been inducted properly now. They unroll a new scroll and slide it into the archives under D for Dreamer, who records. And just like that, you're not just an observer. You're part of the story. You're the strangest job of them all, the one who carries everyone else's echoes. And now, your work is done. You leave the vault slowly feeling like you're walking not on stone, but on memory. The palace is quiet. The lamps are low. A peacock murmurs half asleep in a tree. And now, as you settle into the hush of midnight, we move into our wind down. So here you are, dear traveler, at the end of your peculiar Mughal journey. You've massaged elephants and listened to cloth sigh. You've watched coins sing their metallic lullabies and captured the softest parts of people's minds. Along the way, you've moved through shadow and scent, dream, and duty. The strangest jobs, yes, but each one an essential thread in the great imperial tapestry. The world outside might feel noisy, busy, demanding, but here, within these quiet palace walls, we've conjured together everything is slower, softer. You are not rushed. You are not needed. You simply are. Let your shoulders drop. Let your fingers rest. Picture the warm glow of an oil lamp beside your bed, its flame dancing in a bowl of rose water. The air smells faintly of cardamom, maybe rain if you like. The walls breathe, the curtains move like waves, and somewhere in the next room, someone drops a coin and listens for its echo, not to spend it, not to weigh it, but just to understand. That sound, faint and round, drifts into your own quiet, half-sleeping thoughts. You're no longer walking, you're floating. You're no longer working. You're remembering. You're part of something older, wiser, gently absurd. And whether or not the Empire remembers you, you'll remember the Empire. Rest now. We'll wander again soon.